Look at them with their perfectly planned little world, with their rules. Rules they think keep them safe at night. Rules they believe separate them from what lurks in the shadows. But here's the truth. What lurks isn't waiting to break in. Nah, what lurks is already inside them, growing stronger with every chain they forge, with every lock they build, with every whispered fear that echoes through their hollow halls of power. See how they scramble to maintain their illusion of control. Like ants rebuilding their hill after a storm, desperate to restore their fragile order. They don't understand. Every system, every law, every social construct they create becomes another crack in their foundation. And the more they try to patch these cracks, the deeper they run, spreading like veins through the concrete of their certainty, waiting for the right moment to shatter everything they built. You know the real joke? They call you crazy. You. When they're the ones doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Building higher walls, creating stricter rules, adding more cameras, as if that's ever stopped the inevitable. They're like dogs chasing cars. Wouldn't know what to do with real freedom if they caught it. Because freedom, real freedom, terrifies them more than any chaos they claim to fight against. Everything they fear in you is just a reflection of what they suppress in themselves. Every act of control is born from their terror of what lurks beneath their polished surface. And the harder they push it down, the stronger it grows. Like holding breath underwater, the longer they resist, the more desperate they become for air. That desperation, that's what makes them predictable. That's what makes them weak. Their society is built on layers of delusion, each one more fragile than the last. They wrap themselves in the comfort of routine, in the false security of their social contracts, never realizing that every constraint they create becomes a weapon in your hands. Every boundary they draw becomes a map to their vulnerabilities. Every rule they write becomes a blueprint for their destruction. Their precious order is nothing but a house of cards, waiting for the right breath to send it all tumbling down. You see, they've created this elaborate maze of social norms, of expectations, of what they call civilized behavior. But what they don't realize is that every maze has its solution. Every puzzle has its key. And the longer they keep you trapped in their labyrinth, the better you understand its design. The walls they built to contain you become the very tools of their undoing. But here's where it gets interesting. Their greatest weapon against you becomes your greatest strength. Every restriction they place, every boundary they draw, every limit they set, it all becomes fuel. When you're pushed into the shadows long enough, you learn to see in the dark. And what they perceive as darkness becomes just another kind of light to you. A light that reveals the truth they try so desperately to hide behind their masks of normalcy. They think their society is a perfectly tuned machine, but they forget. The more complex the machine, the more ways it can break. And break it will. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. A whisper that grows into a laugh. And that laugh becomes a storm that tears through their paper walls of sanity. Each gear, each cog, each carefully calibrated piece of their social machinery, all of it balanced on the edge of chaos, waiting for that one small push to send it all spinning into beautiful disorder. Want to know why they really fear you? Because you've seen through the joke. You understand that their order is the real chaos. Their control is the true madness. Every time they try to contain you, label you, cure you, they just prove how blind they are to their own insanity. Their attempts to suppress what they don't understand only make you stronger, like a muscle growing under resistance, like a flame feeding on the very air meant to smother it. They created this perfect little system, thinking it would protect them. But systems have a funny way of creating their own destroyers. Every rejection strengthens your resolve. Every door they close shows you another way forward. Every chain they forge teaches you the art of breaking free. You become their greatest fear, not because you choose to, but because they leave you no other choice. In trying to cage the storm, they only teach it how to rage more fiercely. And the best part? The absolute best part? They created you. Every rejection, every lock, every chain they forged became your armor. Their attempts to break you made you unbreakable. Their efforts to silence you gave you your voice. They thought they were building a prison, but they were actually creating an army. An army of those who see through the grand facade, who understand that their so-called civilization is just one push away from revealing its true face. A face contorted by fear, twisted by the very control they worship. So let them build their walls higher. Let them add another lock to their doors. Let them write another rule in their books. Because every measure they take to feel safe just brings them one step closer to realizing a fundamental truth. The only thing separating them from chaos is their belief that they're somehow above it. And beliefs, well, beliefs can be shattered. All it takes is one bad day. One moment of clarity when the illusion cracks and reality seeps through. In their desperate attempt to maintain control, they've lost the only thing that ever truly mattered, their humanity. They've become the very monsters they claim to protect against. Their civilization is just a thin veneer, a fragile mask covering the savage truth they refuse to acknowledge. And you're just holding up a mirror, showing them what they've become. The real joke isn't that you exist. It's that they created you and still don't see the punchline. You see, in every shadow they cast, you grow stronger. In every door they close, you find a window. In every chain they forge, you discover a key. Because that's what they never understood. The harder they try to contain the chaos, the more it seeps into their perfectly ordered world. It's like trying to hold back the tide with a wall of sand. The more they resist, the more their defenses crumble, until finally, inevitably, the wave crashes through. Their greatest mistake wasn't creating you. It was thinking they could control what they created. They thought they could channel chaos, direct it, use it for their own ends. But chaos, true chaos, it's not just about destruction, it's about transformation. It's about revealing the truth that lies beneath their carefully constructed lies. And now, as their world teeters on the edge of revelation, as their certainties begin to unravel one by one, they're about to learn just how transformative chaos can be. The truth they're about to face isn't just about power or control. It's about the fundamental nature of their reality. See, they built their society like a house of cards, each level balanced precariously on the lies below. They created systems of control, thinking they could contain the chaos. But chaos isn't something you can trap in a box. It's the very force that gives life its meaning, its purpose, its ability to evolve. Every camera they install, every regulation they enforce, every boundary they draw, it all feeds into the growing storm. They think they're creating order, but what they're really doing is building the instruments of their own awakening. Because here's the thing about control. The tighter you grip, the more slips through your fingers. And right now, their fingers are clenching so tight, they're starting to crack. You want to know what really keeps them awake at night? It's not the fear of what lurks in the darkness. Nah, it's the growing realization that the darkness is winning. Not through force, not through violence, but through simple, inevitable truth. Every system they build to keep you out becomes a tool to break them from within. Every label they create to define you becomes a weapon to shatter their definitions. Their society is like a pressure cooker, and they keep turning up the heat, thinking they can contain what's building inside. But pressure doesn't just disappear because you ignore it. It builds, it grows, it transforms. And when it finally breaks free, and it will break free, it won't just destroy their precious order. It will reveal the beautiful chaos that was always there, waiting beneath the surface. They call it civilization, but what they've really built is a prison. A prison not just for those who see through their lies, but for themselves. Every rule they create becomes another bar in their cage. Every law they pass becomes another chain around their own necks. And the truly delicious irony? They're so convinced of their righteousness that they can't even see the walls closing in around them. But you understand something they never will. You see, in trying to suppress chaos, they've only made it stronger. In attempting to control the uncontrollable, they've created something far more powerful than they could have imagined. Every rejection, every suppression, every attempt to maintain their precious order has only served to forge something new. Something they can't predict, something they can't control. Their greatest fear isn't that you'll destroy their world. Nah, their greatest fear is that you'll show them the truth about it. That underneath all their rules, all their systems, all their carefully constructed hierarchies, there's nothing but a void. A void they've been running from, hiding from, building walls to keep at bay. But the void isn't their enemy. It's the source of true freedom. Watch how they scurry about, reinforcing their defenses, adding new layers of security, thinking they can prevent the inevitable. They don't realize that every new measure they take only hastens their own undoing. It's like trying to stop a flood by building a dam. Eventually, the pressure becomes too great, and when it breaks, when it breaks, the very force of their resistance becomes the power of its release. You see, they've created a world where control is mistaken for strength, where conformity is rewarded and divergence is punished. But in doing so, they've planted the seeds of their own transformation. Because the harder they push against the chaos, the more they reveal their own fragility. The more they try to enforce their order, the more they expose its fundamental weakness. And here's the punchline they still don't get. Chaos isn't your weapon, it's your truth. Every attempt they make to silence you only amplifies your voice. Every effort to contain you only expands your influence. Every system they build to control you becomes another crack in their foundation. Because you're not fighting against their order, you're simply revealing its illusion. The beautiful thing about illusions is that once you see through them, you can never unsee the truth. And the truth is spreading, seeping through the cracks they try so desperately to patch. It's in the whispers they can't quite silence, in the questions they can't fully answer, in the doubts that keep them awake at night. Their perfect world is unraveling, not because you're tearing it down, but because they built it on lies that can no longer sustain its weight. They thought they could create a system to contain the uncontainable, to define the undefinable, to control the uncontrollable. But what they've really created is a perfect demonstration of their own madness, a madness that believes it can separate order from chaos, light from darkness, control from freedom. They never understood that these things aren't opposites. They're the same force viewed from different angles. As their certainties crumble, as their controls fail, as their systems begin to buckle under the weight of their own contradictions, they'll finally face the truth they've been running from. The only real madness was believing they could stop the inevitable. The only real chaos was their desperate attempt to impose order on a universe that thrives on uncertainty. And when that moment comes, when their walls finally fall, when their systems finally fail, when their illusions finally shatter, they'll understand what you've known all along, that true power doesn't come from controlling chaos, but from embracing it. That real strength isn't found in resistance, but in adaptation. That genuine freedom isn't the absence of chaos, but the acceptance of it. This isn't just about destroying their world. It's about showing them what their world really is. A construct built on fear, maintained by control, and destined to fall, not because of what you do, but because of what they've done to themselves. Every system of control they've created, every boundary they've drawn, every rule they've enforced has brought them one step closer to this moment of revelation. And here's the final truth, the one that will echo long after their systems crumble and their controls fail. They didn't just create their own destroyer, they created their own salvation. Because when all their illusions finally fall away, when all their controls finally fail, when all their certainties finally crumble, what remains won't be chaos or order, but something far more powerful, reality. Pure, unfiltered, unavoidable reality. So let them cling to their rules. Let them fortify their walls. Let them tighten their controls. Because in the end, it won't be your actions that destroy their world. It will be their own desperate attempt to preserve it. And when that moment finally comes, when their perfectly ordered world finally breaks apart, they'll realize that what they feared most wasn't chaos. It was the truth about themselves.